if you've ever wanted to learn about rugby, today is the day that you need to listen into this episode because I've got a coach joining me. Some of the topics we're going to be discussing today are coaching, the sport as a whole, safety, and the growth of the sport, not only now, but going forward. What do we have for the potential of rugby in the United States? You don't want to miss this episode of The Game Time Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time! Woo!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome out to another episode of the Game Time Guru podcast. I'm your host, Shane Larson, coming at you today with a special guest talking about rugby. I've got Jeff Harward in the house. Jeff, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me out, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, this has been a long time coming. Actually, it's not been a long time coming. It's been like a week coming. But the thing is, it worked out perfectly. This past weekend, I was in Utah. Jeff happened to be in Idaho the same weekend that I was leaving. Anyways, it was just a weird thing. And I actually had another interview scheduled for today at this exact time, but that interview fell through. So we were able to get you on today. I think it was just a blessing in disguise. So I'm stoked to have you on here. So, Jeff, you have a lot of experience with rugby. I've said it in the introduction. I want to let you introduce yourself, though, and kind of let the listeners know who you are. So who is Jeff Harward?
In a nutshell. So I'm actually originally from here in Meridian and moved up to Washington back in 2012, and that is where I first got involved with rugby. Got invited out to come play with a couple of friends, and turns out it was a full-on team and league. So I decided to start there. Played football my whole life, so I thought, hey, why not give it a try and see if I liked it, and turns out greatest sport I ever played, man.
So was it hard to get used to rugby from the rules of football to rugby, like when you first started playing?
I wouldn't say so. I think it was an easy transition. I feel like if you're athletic at all, you should be able to pick rugby up pretty easy because the rules are the base rules are pretty simple. You have the ball, you run forward. If you don't have the ball, tackle the guy with the ball. So
simple.
It's pretty straightforward, yeah.
Because it's funny, I have a cousin of mine who's just started playing. He's in 9th grade, I believe, and it's extremely difficult for me to figure it out because I'm not a huge rugby guy. I don't understand the rules, but to me it seems complicated. But I guess I might be overanalyzing it a little bit because I think too deep into it. I'm like, what the heck is he doing? So it is pretty basic. But what age were you when you said you started playing for the first time?
22.
22, but you had played football your whole life.
Yes. And
you decided to go with this. So if you had to choose football or rugby, what would it be? If you had to choose, you could get paid to do any one of them for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Rugby.
Okay, really?
100%, yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
Sweet. All right. So who's your favorite club, professional?
Well, I'd have to say the club I enjoy most watching is probably, and a lot of people would say, oh, you just say that because they're the most well-known, but the All Blacks from New Zealand, they're the New Zealand national team. Hands down, the most exciting team to watch.
Why are they so exciting?
Rugby is their national sport.
Okay.
And so how you see kids here playing football at such a young age, little kids with little tiny footballs, over there, it's rugby. So it's not just a sport to them, it is a way of life. And how they play is so simple. A lot of people, they try to make it complicated when it comes to it. Watching the All Blacks, you just see the most simple game played, and that is the most fun for me because it works every time.
I love it. I love that. That's rad. The way of life. That's kind of how I felt with like the Brazilians in soccer. It was the same concept. Like the kids were playing at a very young age. They were talking like 2-3 years old. They're out there kicking the, little bags that they made into a ball, and that's kind of what they did. That was like what their life was, and that's cool. So I imagine it's similar to that. Aren't the All Blacks don't they have they do the haka or whatever it is at the beginning, whatever they do, their little war chant?
Yeah. So the haka, and I've never been to New Zealand, which I would love to be able to.
That'd be pretty sick.
Yeah, but so the haka is what they do at the beginning. It's not what it is it's an invitation essentially. So It's a challenge to the other team. So a lot of people think it's just for them to get pumped up. It's not what it is. For them, it's tradition of extending a challenge to the other team to battle. So essentially, you're coming onto this field. We're here. Let's get it on.
I think that's so dope.
Yeah.
I've seen a few of those like before the matches, and they're intense, dude. It's so sick. Have you ever been to a rugby match like outside of what you've played in and stuff, like a professional rugby match?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity back in, I think it was 2013 or 14. Me and my brother, we got to fly back to Chicago and watch the All Blacks versus the USA match, and it was amazing. It was incredible to see how many people came out here in America to see that match, and we filled the Bears Stadium. So
it was filled?
Yeah, it was incredible to be there. The atmosphere is amazing, and like you said, the haka would be incredible to watch live. It is powerful.
I bet it is
powerful.
Was it cold when you guys went there? I couldn't remember.
It was weird. It was cold and it snowed, and then the sun came out and it was hot, and then it snowed again.
So it's like Idaho, essentially, all in a day?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Except even it was colder than what Idaho's mood swings were.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was awesome.
Oh, man, that's rad. That's cool. You got to see that, and you got to go to. Is it Soldier Field?
Soldier Field. Yeah,
I think it's what it is. Yeah, that's pretty dope. You got to see a big time match there.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's pretty intense. Now let's talk about the sport of rugby as a whole. You talked about how it's the fastest growing sport in the States. Why do you think that is?
Well, I was just going to say because it's new, but it's not. The rugby as a sport has been around for a long time, but I think we've seen it make a huge comeback. It was in the Olympics,
right,
and they did the sevens. So there's two different types of rugby. There's 15s, which is a full side, and then there's sevens, which is a much faster paced game.
Okay.
And I think it being back in the Olympics really put it out there too, to make it something that is now interesting to people. It's been there for a long time, but we just haven't had the interest. We haven't had the ability to get out there to everybody and say, hey, check this sport out. It's awesome. And so
right.
I think that was a big, a little like a catapult for us to be in the eye. So
let's talk about that, though. The sevens and the 15s, can you kind of go a little bit more in depth with that? So the sevens a little faster pace. Is that just the amount of players that are on the field? Is it like 7-on-7 football? Is it different than 11-on-11 kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's exactly it. So 15s is there's 15 players from each team on the field at a time.
Okay.
So it's not as wide open because there's more players on the field. So it's not as fast-paced because there's a lot more passing, tackling, breakdown, and the reset. Whereas in sevens, there's only 7 guys, so the field is wide open. So you have to be really quick to try to hit that corner and beat people out because there's not as many guys on the pitch.
And do you play on the same size of a field or pitch?
Yep. Yeah.
Let's get the verbiage correct. The
pitch.
Okay, so on the pitch. So it's the same size, though. It's not like they
Yeah.
shorten it for you on sevens.
No, it's the same size.
Okay, so you would basically have a lot of fast guys like yourself, the littler guys that are quick and powerful but can get around.
Yeah, so you want – you need some power because you still have to be tackled and make tackles. But the idea is to really, step a guy, trip him up, and as soon as you got him tripped up, step on the gas and get out of there.
So that wouldn't be my sevens isn't my sport. That wouldn't be what I'd be playing. I'm too slow for that. I couldn't hang with y'all.
Hey, it could be. You could just be a body on the pitch, and then make a pass and take up space if you really wanted to.
That's like the guy in basketball that just sets picks. Like, hey, oh no, you're good, man. You can get rebounds and set screens for us. You're good at that. Like, I hate that.
Except you can't do that in rugby. You can't set screens. You can't.
So
block.
I'd basically be worthless. Thank you, though. I appreciate
Try
that.
15s. Try 15s.
We might have to try that out. Now, do you see, like, we're talking about how it's growing so fast, and I know, like, the United States typically is late to the game when it comes to a lot of these sports that are kind of like I don't know, like, it just seems like, soccer, like the international sports. Yes,
Yeah.
It's a good way to put it. Do you see it becoming more and more popular than even possibly football? As we're seeing football to be, we have a lot of the whole concussions and like CTE, all that stuff's coming out. Plus, you got politics breaching the NFL world and the college football world at this point. So a lot of people are starting to see this decline in American football. Do you see rugby surpassing that at one point, sometime?
Yes. So this year, it was either last year or the year before they tried to start a professional rugby league.
Okay.
It was kind of the first time. I don't feel like the organization was set up 100%, and it kind of fell through. There wasn't enough people interested to get it off the ground.
Okay.
They did just start a new professional rugby league. It's called the MLR.
Okay.
And the first matches were over this last weekend, and it was huge. The amount of publicity they've been able to get, the athletes that have come out, is incredible. And I think it just wasn't time back when they tried the other one. It's time now.
Okay.
And people are noticing that. The game of rugby as a whole has just become so much more popular, and it's only going up from here. I guarantee that it eventually, and I think soon, will become a school sport.
Okay.
And so kids in high school will have the opportunity to play that, and it won't just be a club team anymore, club sport. So I think it's definitely going to, be huge in the next couple of years.
I like that. One thing that we were talking about before we started recording was the fact that I have a family member of mine. My cousin just started. He's in 9th grade. And like you said, it's not a school sport, but it is a club sport for the school. It's all weird how they do that, but it's kind of like college. Like when I used to box at Boise State, it was a club sport, but we technically were Boise State. We just had to fund everything ourselves. So that's how it was. Like the school didn't sponsor it. But it is growing because I see these kids out there. He's in 9th grade, and they're starting to – they have the code, they go to practice, they have all this stuff, and it's starting. When I was in high school, we're just talking about in the last 10, 12 years, they didn't have that. Mm-hmm. I don't remember there being rugby when we were at Meridian High School.
Yeah, no,
you were only 2 or 3 years behind us. It wasn't like you were that far behind us. It wasn't.
Yeah, there wasn't.
And it's already grown to where it's at now in 10 years, so I can't even imagine in another 10 years, like you were saying, I could see it, especially with the professional league coming out here, if they have success, possible TV deals where they get more exposure. Man, it could blow up.
Yeah, so the MLR actually does. They made a TV deal with ESPN.
Do they really?
Yeah, and CBS Sports.
That's big time.
It is big time. So the games were on this last weekend. They were on Root Sports.
Okay.
On the local networks, and then ESPN Plus as well. And I can only see it, like I said, growing even bigger from there. I mean, prime time will be able to fill stadiums for not international matches, but for professional matches here in the States.
And what do you know, off the top of your head, how many teams there are in the league or close to it? Is there just a few? Or
I think there's 7.
Okay,
7 right now. Off the top of my head, there's the Seattle Seawolves.
Okay.
The San Diego Legion, Utah Warriors, New Orleans. They're called NOLA.
Okay.
There's a team out of Texas. I believe a team out of Colorado. And I believe 1 or 2 more, but off the top of my head, I don't know those ones.
That's actually really – I was in Salt Lake City this past weekend. I saw an advertisement for the Utah rugby squad, so that's pretty sick. Okay,
yeah.
So that's what it was for. I didn't even know. I was like, oh, whatever. But that's pretty dope. I'm actually excited for this. I'm not anti-rugby by any means. I love sports in general. So I'm excited to learn more about this. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited to see it. If I can watch more of it and actually understand it, that's when I enjoy it. So I'm excited for it. Now, let's talk about your experience right now. So you played. Let's talk about who you played for. So you were up in Seattle, in the Washington area, and you said you started playing with a couple buddies when you were 22? Mm-hmm. 22, okay.
Yep.
Who were you playing for, and what is that even a part of? That's not professional, right? You didn't get paid for it, did you?
No, I didn't. So originally I moved up there, and I met a guy at church. His name was Pate.
Okay.
And, he was a Fijian guy, super nice guy, and he's like, hey, why don't you come out and play with me and my buddies get together and play some rugby? And I thought, sweet, this will be cool. Get out there, be introduced to it a little bit, learn how to play it. Well, I showed up, and turns out it was the one of the first practices for the starting season of the Seattle Saracens. Back then, they weren't called the Seattle Saracens. It was within the next couple years that we became part of the Saracens family.
Okay.
So the Saracens are actually over in England. That's where the club is, and we became part of their club over here in the States. but that was a couple years later. So it was actually Old Puget Sound Beach Rugby. So OPSB was the name of the club, and Seattle Rugby Club. So they had two clubs that kind of merged together.
Okay.
So when I started playing, anyways, that was the first practice, and they had like a team meeting and everything. I showed up, and I'm like, this is not just a couple of buddies getting together. This is a real thing. And I thought, all right, well, I'll do it. Why not? So I went out to that practice, and after that first practice, I was like, this is freaking awesome. I was like, I'm going to stick around for this.
Well, your first practice, though, what was your thoughts? You get out there. Did you know the rules yet of rugby? Did you?
No, so I had no idea.
Tell me what's going through your mind, Jeff Harward's mind, when you got out there for your first practice of rugby. What were you scared? What was the thoughts?
I wasn't scared. I was just more excited because it had been a long time since I had to learn a new sport. I mean, from the time I was 5 years old, I'd been playing football. I played baseball. I wrestled. I did lacrosse. I did, everything there was growing up. And for the first time in a long time, I was going to learn a brand new sport.
Right.
And not only a sport, but just an exciting sport.
Right.
It's nonstop, right? Running clock for the first half and then the second half. And just constant movement, which I thought was the best part about this whole thing. So I was super excited. I got out there, and I'll tell you what, if you learn to play rugby in a men's club for the very first time, you learn lessons really quick.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a lot of patience for people who come out and like to break the rules. Rugby is all about respect and professionalism, and people that just like to muck it up for fun, they won't last very long on the pitch. I'll tell you that right now.
That's funny, man. Now, okay, so do you still play? Before we get into your coaching side of things, do you still compete, like as far as a player, or did you kind of hang up the cleats, so to speak, in that?
Yeah, for now I did, just through a series of injuries, unfortunately. For now, maybe down the road I'll play for the old boys team, which is another awesome aspect of rugby. I mean, you're never too old to play. Because they have teams of essentially it's alumni that play. They'll have the same team name, but it's called the Old Boys.
Okay.
Side. So you get up and you play against people your own age. So maybe down the road I will, but I enjoyed the time that I had, and it was some of the best years of my life by far.
So you mentioned injuries, though, and knowing you for quite some time now, I've known Jeff for probably 15 years now. Yeah. I met you when I was in high school. You're injury prone. Your whole family is just period. I don't know how else to say it. You and your brothers, everybody. Okay, right. So you're injury prone. What were some of the injuries you sustained in rugby?
The biggest injury I sustained was a shoulder issue. It wasn't anything having to do with the game being unsafe, but just more of it could have happened in any sport, really.
Okay.
Just a bad tackle. My shoulder got landed on and tore my labrum. And then again later, tore my labrum, tore my bicep. Just tore it up pretty bad. So.
Did you have surgery on your labrum?
I did. I had twice, actually.
Dude, this is the second time this has come up in the last 2 weeks because I was interviewing another guy, Kyle Brotzman. He had the same issue. I had labrum surgery last year. It is one of the worst surgeries I've ever, one of the worst things I've had to go through. I know I sound like a wuss, but I always say that. It was terrible, man. I don't know how you did it twice.
It's definitely not fun. So yeah, I've had both my knees done ACL repairs, and that sucked. But you're right. Shoulder surgery is just, I don't know what it is, but it's terrible.
Dude, it's brutal.
It's next level. That's for sure.
Man. So you hurt your knees in football, though, right? In other sports?
Actually,
or lacrosse?
My first knee surgery was from lacrosse my junior year of high school. And then right before I started playing rugby up in Seattle, I blew my other knee out playing basketball at the gym, of all places. So
really? Okay.
Yeah.
Dang, dude. Yeah, you are injury prone. It's all a mixture of it. So you mentioned about, it wasn't a thing of rugby being unsafe or anything like that. I want to talk about that real quick before we get into your coaching discussion here. But being unsafe, people see it and they think of it as this violent sport because they don't wear pads and blah, blah, blah. It's that whole discussion that we always hear. It's like the soccer mom discussion. Everybody talks about it I'm not letting my kid play it.
Yeah.
That whole thing that goes down. So what do you feel about it? Is it more safe than football? Is it less safe than football? And why or why not?
I believe 100% that it is more safe than football is.
Why?
So because you don't have all the pads, you are 100% more aware of your body and what you do with it. It's really easy. I know that the new updated rules, I know in college football, I'm sure everybody gets annoyed of all the replays all the time, and then the targeting calls that are very questionable. That none of that is even close to happening on the rugby pitch, because you will never fly into a tackle with your head down or up high, because all the rules in rugby, besides the in-game play rules, are centered around safety of the players. There is so many rules when it comes to tackling that unless you're out there, like I said, just to run amok,
Right.
you're not going to hurt most people when you're going for a proper tackle. I mean, nowadays, a lot of like the Seattle Seahawks, they went out to do tackling clinics with a company. Originally when it started, it was called Cerevi, but now it's called Atavus.
Okay.
And they show proper technique in tackling. They call it rugby tackling. And professional teams are going to that now because of how important technique is in the tackle and how that can keep you safe and how it can keep the person you're tackling safe. So that is what rugby is about. It is a game, it's fast-paced. I wouldn't say it's violent, but it is definitely full contact.
Right.
But it is centered around keeping the game safe and fun for everybody.
I like it. And like I guess you said earlier, like if somebody comes out there just to run amok and just kind of, they'll learn the rules real quick because they're not going to let them get away with that, essentially is what you're saying, right?
No,
So
definitely not.
If they do something stupid, they're going to learn pretty quick.
Yes.
Not to do that anymore. I like that, man. That's interesting for me because, I don't know too much about it, and just watching it, I'm actually like terrified of it, but I could see it being like, as long as you get out there and be aggressive and you're smart, it seems like you got a lot of smart players, basically what I'm trying to say. Now let's talk about your coaching side. You're up in Washington. We're in Idaho right now. You guys know that by now that I live here. But Washington's north of here, and I want to know what you're doing there with rugby, since you're not playing right now, you're not competing, but you're helping out. What are you doing?
So when I moved from Seattle over to Tri Cities,
shout out to the Tri Cities. That's where my in-laws live, even though I don't really like that place. Shout out to the Tri Cities. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I moved from Seattle out to Tri Cities, and my first thought was, I wanted to look for a rugby club out there, if not to actually play in games, just to go out and practice and stay in shape and keep my game knowledge up.
Right.
And turned out there really wasn't anything going on there. And it really bummed me out because I had been involved so heavily with the Seattle Saracens over in Seattle. And I got online. I was looking around, didn't find anything. I got on Facebook, and I thought maybe something will be on Facebook. Well, it turned out over the past 5 years, a couple people have tried to get together and start a rugby club there in Tri Cities. And it just never came to fruition. Nothing ever came out of it.
Right.
Well, I contacted a few of the guys on there, and I said, hey, let's try to start a youth team, because I guarantee you there is so many kids out here that if we could get them a little taste of the game, they will come out. And so me and a few other guys, the president of our club right now, his name's Matt
Okay.
Hudson, another fellow named Paul French, and then Mike. I always have trouble with his last name. He's from South Africa.
Oh.
Sitakima, I think is his last name. He was actually coaching the WSU Tri Cities rugby team at the time.
Okay.
So I called him up, and we got together, and we decided, you know what, we're going to start a club. So we started a high school rugby team up there in Tri Cities, and this is our second season now. And we fielded a team for the last 2 years. So it's been pretty amazing. It was awesome to see it come pretty much from nothing, get the word out there, and we've had a team the last 2 years.
Okay, so do you guys play 7s or 15s? What?
15s.
You got 15s?
Yep.
Okay, and what's the age range of the guys that you're coaching?
Right now, because it's so new, we're really just trying to focus in on freshmen to senior, so high school age boys.
All right, and let's see this. So when they first started coming to, participate with your guys' club. What was the sports background for most of these players? Were they majority of them football players, or the majority of soccer, or was it a mixture of a lot? What'd you see?
I would say it was 65% football, and then we had a few wrestlers that came out. Yeah.
Okay.
So the season for us is like in the spring. So we'll do a little bit preseason starting like February, and then March until May is the season. So wrestling was just kind of getting out, and it was like, what does a wrestler do? Does he play in – because I wrestled in high school. There's a lot of people that if they focus on wrestling, that's all they do, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do after wrestling's done? Well, you could do freestyle. You could do freestyle. You could do club wrestling. Or, hey, there's this new thing, and the timing is perfect, right? So we had a couple of wrestlers come out as well.
That's awesome. Okay. Did anybody that started with you guys have rugby experience prior to that? Like the players, I should say, not the coaches, but the players.
We had one player that had kind of grown up around rugby a little bit.
Okay.
And so he was really the only one with a legitimate rugby background.
Okay. And then the Tri Cities area that you're referring to, it's 3 main cities, but like I know they have high schools around there. You're targeting high school guys. Is it a mixture of kids from different schools, like that go to different schools there, public schools, or how is it working right now?
Yeah, so it's essentially just all of the Tri-Cities area, which is Kennewick, Pasco, and Richland.
Okay.
And then there's a few like tiny places just outside the Tri-Cities that we have a few kids that travel into Tri-Cities to practice with us.
Okay.
So because it's so new, we don't have the ability to have more than one team yet.
Okay.
But eventually what we want is to be able to have it like it is here, which is high schools have their own team.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not technically considered a school sport here. It's still a club sport, but there is enough people, enough boys that want to come out that are interested at Mountain View that they have their own team, and then at Meridian and at Eagle. Over there, we've got some really big high schools too, but it's just not big enough yet to branch off.
Gotcha.
So it's pretty much everybody there. If anyone wants to come out, they are welcome to come out.
And how did you guys do this? How are you guys doing as far as record is concerned? Have you won any matches? Or how's it going?
Yeah, so last year it was our very first season, obviously. Like I said, we had one guy that knew rugby. Everyone else was brand new. And we won, I think we went 5-2.
Oh, really?
Which is pretty dang good. Actually, sorry, reverse that. 2-5.
2-5.
2-5.
Okay.
Sorry. I got a little excited.
I was like, whoa.
I got a little excited. And that's the thing is, like, we had some guys that came out that played football their whole lives, and like I said, they just wanted to play.
Yeah.
Right? They came out, they worked hard, they listened, they were respectful, which is a big thing to be on our team there in Tri-Cities. You have to be respectful. And they came out, they wanted to play, they worked hard, and they were incredible to see go from never seeing the sport till the end of the season. They looked amazing. This year, right now, we're 2-2.
Okay.
So obviously we still have work to do. We're still a little light on numbers, which is what we're really working on, trying to get as many people to come out as we can. But for how new everybody is, I think it's amazing that, how well we're doing.
And who are you guys competing against since you guys kind of took over those 3 cities that are right there? Who do you guys travel and play against, and where do you even play?
So there is up in Washington, it's the union is just for the state there in Washington. And most of the teams are actually on the other side of the mountains over in Seattle.
Okay.
So you have Kent, Northside. You have a couple teams in Seattle. And then you have Yakima has a team. Wenatchee has a team. There's a team up in Spokane. So really for the guys on the east side of the state, we have to travel quite a bit.
Okay.
But, all the boys, it's not a big deal if they can, if they get to play.
That's
rad. What they really want. As
a coach yourself, you mentioned this before we started recording as well, but, you're coaching younger guys, and you know how you were as a teenager. I know how I was as a teenager. Like, everybody has their different personalities. What's, some of the most rewarding parts about being a coach? What's some of the toughest parts about being a coach? And what's the difference between coaching youth, like the younger age players, and maybe like a professional athlete, like an older man?
It is a big difference. So when I started playing, I was already an adult, and you go out to a team and you have to be pretty dang humble because, you're an adult, right?
Right.
You feel like, oh, I already know. Well, you don't. So,
Right.
Either you listen or you can leave. That's the bottom line. With youth, you expect them to already have that mentality of, well, you're an adult, you're the coach, I'll listen to you. And that's what we expect. But not only that, the game of rugby is it's all about respect. And we demand that. And I will give you the same amount of respect that you give me. You have boys that come out to practice who think that they are, too good to practice, essentially.
Right.
And those are the boys that I say, all right, I'll let you play, and then you let me know what you think. And after about 30 minutes of nonstop running, they realize, well, maybe I am not as good as I think I am.
Right.
And you learn really quick. But you really have to break it down a lot more. For the younger kids, instead of just repetition, if they keep failing and you just keep repeating the same thing over and over, you can't do that. That's not how they learn. Their mind works differently. You've got to stop. You've got to break it down. You've got to help them understand. And if there is a hurdle, whatever that hurdle is in their mind, you've got to break that down because that's how it's going to happen. It's not the same as where you're coaching an adult and you'll just keep repeating it over and over and over until they realize, oh, that's it. It's different. You got to stop it. You ask questions. You have them ask questions.
Right.
And then you break it down. So you have to have a little bit more patience. It's really easy when you're coaching an adult to just say, all right, go run. Or,
Right.
okay, we're done with this. Because you can't. With youth, you have to get past that barrier or else it'll always be there. Right? And then they'll never be able to improve. So you show the kids respect, and they will feel that. They'll realize it, and they'll give you the respect back. And that's really how us coaches there at Tri Cities Rugby Club are all about. That's how we coach, with respect. The kids feel that, and they give the respect back.
And is that one of the most rewarding things about being a coach? Like, what's the most rewarding thing, or like, what's your favorite part about being a coach?
My favorite part about being a coach is just passing all the knowledge on and watching them implement it, and then having that light turn on and you see it.
Yeah.
And they almost get this look on their face like, oh my gosh, it makes sense.
Right.
And it's like, I told you would get it. I gave you all the tools, and now you're the one doing the work. That's the most rewarding for me. That and having a coach come up to us after the game and say, hey, we've played against a lot of teams, and your boys are the most respectful group of boys that we've played against. No talking, no chirping, no attitude. None of that happened, and that's really rewarding for me.
That's rad. You keep mentioning respect. It's a big deal. Earlier, you even mentioned something about, like, from a coaching aspect, it's different than football. Why?
And I played football my whole life.
Right.
And I'm not trying to rag on football because, a lot of players that come out to play rugby, I guarantee are going to be football background.
Yeah.
And I'm not coming down on football coaches because every coach has their own way to coach, but it's a little bit louder, a little bit more in your face. Rugby isn't necessarily about that, because the breakdown is so important about the sport. And there's not time to coach on the field. In rugby, you have two halves, 40 minutes each half. And during that time of play, there's no opportunities to coach. You let them out on the pitch, and they are alone. That is it until halftime.
Let them spread their wings and fly.
Exactly. So if every time you had the opportunity to coach or bring them in, you're just yelling and screaming about what they did wrong and this and that, that to me is not coaching. That's yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
Take the chance to bring them in and say, boys, what do you think you did right? Okay, what do you think you did wrong? Let them bring it up. If they don't have anything, give them your observations. But take the chance to coach.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. And growing up, I did have a lot of coaches that didn't take that time.
Right.
They took the time to try to drill it in you. This is what you're doing wrong. This is what you're doing wrong. They didn't give me the chance to learn on my own what I
Right.
was doing wrong, and then build me up. So I feel like that's a big difference.
Yeah.
And even when I played on the men's team up in Seattle, that wasn't the coaching style either. It wasn't about getting in your face and yelling and pointing at you and, getting spit on.
Yeah.
That wasn't the style of coaching. It was, listen, this is where we need to improve. Let's work on this. It was very focused. So I think that's a big difference.
Okay. I like that a lot. Now, from just listening to you talk, it seems like I always tell people how sports can be related to like anything in life as far as like business and careers and such. And I even just had a podcast this last week about that, like how sports can directly like be implemented into your business life, everything you learn from it. It sounds like a lot of these players, like I've said for my whole life, like a lot of things I learned in basketball, a lot of things I learned in boxing, everything that I've played, I can implement that into my daily life now, like what I'm doing in my day-to-day job. But from rugby, like it sounds like they're very respectful. The kids will learn that from a young age, very respectful. And then obviously you would be considered like a manager in this sense if we're talking about business. You're respectful, and if you have respect, you're going to get respect. It almost sounds like these kids, like if they can get into rugby early, that might even be the best opportunity for them to learn real life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like outside of sports, because it sounds like it's you give respect, you get it, but you're also learning a lot at the same time, and you're producing a good product on the field. So it's just interesting. That's what my thoughts came to mind while you were talking. Jeff, before we go, man, first off, do you have any shout outs you want to give to anybody?
Yeah. First of all, shout out to the club that really obviously brought me into the game and took me under their wing, even though I was brand new. A lot of the players that I played with are internationally known players, best of the best. A lot of them played on the USA side. A lot of them now play in the MLR. So shout out to the Seattle Saracens, who is also our new parent club, if you will.
Okay.
So Tri Cities Rugby Club, which is the club that we started there in Tri Cities. The Saracens have been amazing in helping us get started, giving us the kit that we have, which is now ours, and which the boys were super excited about.
I bet.
Shout out to them, and then just shout out to all the boys that have come through this last year and that are on the team now. All the hard work that you've put in, and you guys are the true pioneers for the sport and our club there in Tri Cities. So give it a good name, keep up the hard work, and man, we'll make a name for ourselves yet. So
I love it, man. And Jeff Harward, where are you going to go with rugby? What do you see yourself doing in the future? If we're looking 10 years down the road from now, in 10 years, how do you see yourself making an impact in the rugby world?
I would love to be involved in a club here, maybe in Idaho.
Okay.
Eventually, I'd like to get back here with my family, and I would love to be involved in really growing the sport for all ages, or even in an area that doesn't have a club like we did in Tri-Cities, just creating clubs and getting people interested in the game, just growing the game. I mean, that's my biggest thing. I love it. I've got a passion for it, and because of that, I want to spread it. So I would love to be involved in just growing the game wherever, maybe working with USA Rugby or, any kind of organization like that.
Love it, man. And I appreciate you joining the show and, educating me as well as the listeners on the sport of rugby. So that was legit. It was good catching up with you. For everybody out there, hope you learned as much as I did today. And make sure you check out Jeff Harward. He's going to make a name for himself in the next 10 years. This sport has already grown in the last 10 years. Imagine in 10 years from now as he continues to help the youth as well as other clubs. So you guys know the drill. Appreciate you listening. We'll talk to you next week. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.